All right, folks, welcome to episode 16 of Yonin's Edge. This episode is Basic Guide to Knife Sharpening. If you're already a knife sharpening pro, this video is definitely not aimed at you. This is more for the novice or the unindoctrinated. But who knows, maybe if you watch the video, you might pick up a few tidbits as well. So knife edges, let's start by talking about that a little bit. Regardless of which type of blade steel you have, there are some very common cutting angles for most everyday carry, pocket knives, and even common kitchen cutlery. So these typically are 14 degrees, 17 degrees, 20 degrees, 23 degrees, and 25 degrees. So there are also generally two types of sharpened edges, a single bevel and what a lot of people call a micro bevel. I will show you what those are and what they look like right here real quick. Single bevel is this. You got one angle on this side, one angle on that side. This is very common on factory knives. Most factory knives, not all, but a lot of them, are sharpened on belt sharpeners. So they basically just run it across this side of the blade, run it across that side of the blade. You get one angle down to a fine point. You get a sharp knife, but that's a single bevel. And then micro bevel, you're going to come down and maybe this is sharpened at, let's say, 20 degrees, this longer angle, and then that angle at the very bottom right there is sharpened at, say, 23 or 25. And here's a blown up view of that, not drawn to scale, folks. And it shows you that there are going to be two very distinct angles. The advantage to this is you're still going to get a really fine point, but you're going to have more material here at the bottom of where the actual cutting edge of the blade is. So it makes a blade that's a little bit more durable. But just for the purposes of when I talk a little later about some of the sharpeners, you'll know single bevel, micro bevel. Okay? All right. In general, when we talk about blade angles, the higher the angle, the more durability and edge retention the knife will have. Higher angles reduce cutting ability, though. And then conversely, lower angles have improved cutting ability, but will have less durability and edge retention. And I'm going to show you another quick little drawing of what that's like. So let's say you have a knife that has a finer 14-degree edge. You can see how very narrow this V is and how it comes down to a very narrow pointy point right there. This knife is going to cut really well, but will not have as good of edge retention because obviously there's not a lot of material there. And then here's a knife for reference purposes that has a 20-degree V in it. And you can see that it still comes down to a point, but there's definitely more width here on this piece of steel than there is this one. And that would be if you were looking at the knife headlong like this. That's what I'm attempting to show you. So this knife actually is sharpened at around 14 degrees, and that's where this is going to be right there. Okay? So just so you have a visual to lock in with the information I'm giving you. Okay? Let's show you what 20 degrees looks like too on a protractor. Okay? So this would be looking at the blade from that same angle. And as you can see, there's 20 degrees right there. Boom. And that's half of a blade. So this center line here would be the middle of the blade. This is one side of the blade going up at 20 degrees. So you can see 14 or 15 right in the middle there. Well, not a whole lot of difference, but not something on a blade like this that you could probably see with the naked eye in most cases, right? To be hard to tell. But that shows you a little bit what those cutting angles are. So most of your cutting angles, like I said, are going to be between, say, 14 and 25 degrees. The higher angles, 28, 30 degrees, are mostly for like bigger survival knives, machetes, hatchets, things like that. And if you're not sure about what your knife should be sharpened at, you can look online, contact your manufacturer. They'll usually tell you. A lot of times, like for a knife like this, Kershaw online listed like 14 to 17 degrees or 17 to 19 or something like that. Anyway, they give you like a variation. So it doesn't mean you can't sharpen the knife. If it's listed at 17 degrees, it doesn't mean it can't be sharpened at 19 degrees, right? It'll give you a little bit more durable edge, but a tiny bit less cutting. So that's really just a guideline. And then finally, before I jump into sharpeners, I also want to mention that if you don't know your knife's sharpening angle, or you just want to get close, there's a simple way to do that. And we call that the Sharpie Method. And all you need is one of these bad boys right here. Any Sharpie of any medium to dark color will work great. And that will help you to figure out if you're sharpening your knife at the right angle. And I'm going to demonstrate that here in the video. All right. Also, I'm showing cheap sharpeners as well as the more popular type of sharpeners because there's going to be some folks out there who are going to go sharpen with the cheap sharpener and go, I got a cheap knife. This is good enough for me. That's as sharp as I need it to be, and that's perfectly okay. So I'm going to go through these, and then I'm going to demonstrate what they are. So the first one is what we call a pull-through or V-block sharpener. And I'm going to use a really cheap knife for this because I don't really need to use a really fancy knife. So these are examples of pull-through or V-block sharpeners. So typically, this little Smith's one right here is kind of cool. I've used this a lot over the years out in the field. So it has a carbide side with hard carbide insets. The angle's already set at around 20 degrees, and all you do is draw the knife through there. And then it has ceramics, which virtually never wear out. And this is to finish off the knife and get some of the roughness out of it. So to use this, it's really simple. All you're going to do is you're going to start out with the carbide side. You're going to place the knife in. And here's the thing. I'm going to cover this as well. It's very important that I talk about this. Pressure, correct pressure is imperative to properly sharpen any knife. And then the second thing is listen, use your ears, okay? So what we're looking for before we start sharpening is if I were to go to the fine diamond on this and I run my finger across it, you hardly hear any noise. But if I come over here to this medium grit one and I run my finger across this, listen. Hear that? So that's actually taking material off because that is a coarser grit. This is still taking material off with the same amount of pressure, but it's a finer grit. But what I'm saying there is I'm listening with my ears for that abrasive noise. So it's going to be the same thing when you sharpen on any of these devices I have here on the table, with the exception of the strop. Basically, you want light pressure. You want to put the knife down. That's the weight of the knife. And then you want a little bit of pressure from your hand. Don't press. Don't try to press the knife into the sharpener or jam a knife into the stone or the diamond grits. Don't try to do that. Just put the knife down, let it rest, light pressure from your hand. And on these pull-through or V-blocks, all you're going to do with these is just draw back. Now, I know you guys heard some noise there. That's good. That means it's sharpening. It's gritty. Ooh, listen. Hear the sound change? We're done. Okay? We're done with this pull-through with the carbide section. Okay? Now, we're going to put it on the ceramic one, and we're going to do the same thing. Rest the knife there, knife pressure, just a tiny bit of hand pressure, just enough to let your hand kind of rest down on it, pull through. Okay? And right there. So now there's two things I notice on the carbide. First of all, the sound changed a little bit, but also the drag on the knife went away. So that means it's done pulling all the little coarse bits off of this. Okay? So this knife is for this type of sharpener right here, for this, or this Lansky, which does multiple types of knives. Obviously, I was talking about angles. This does 17, it does 20, it does 25, and it does 30. And it also has a little ceramic piece down here that you can use to fix up your edges or sharpen your serrations. So this one is nice if you have a lot of different knives that you use out in the field and you want a quick sharpening. So the advantages to these pull-throughs, let's talk about that real quick. The pros to them is they're really cheap, they're economical. This one is about 10 bucks. This one I think is like 19. I'm going to provide links to everything you see on the table here in the description of the video. So if there's anything you see here you want to buy, you'll be able to go look it up in terms of the sharpening stuff. I will not post a link to this older sharpening wet oil stone I have because I don't think they're available anymore, but I will post a link to a Smith's one set that's just like this. So just real quick, these are great. They're easy to use. The cons to them is you have to maintain the same pressure all the way through the stroke, not pull through crooked or sideways. The other thing is that they tend to shave material off along the length of the blade, the blocks do this way, rather than off of the cutting edge of the blade, which is what all these other sharpeners here on the table do. They take material off the actual cutting edge of the blade, whereas these V-block sharpeners, they take the material off of both sides of the blade. And then the other thing with these is you're never ever going to get as sharp an edge as you will on a stone or a diamond grit or a ceramic or whatever. You're just never going to get that kind of sharpening out of these. These are good for what I call a working edge or workable edge, but they're not going to make a razor sharp, shave the hair off your arm type of edge. You're just not going to get that off of a V-block sharpener. For a lot of people, these are fine. I do have knives I use these for. This 30-degree one over here I use to sharpen my hatchet, and it works great because obviously a hatchet has a lot of weight. It doesn't need a super fine edge, and I want to basically have something that's durable and holds up. So these are pull-throughs. There'll be links in the description to both of those. So next, let's move over to honing stones. So these come in a lot of different variations. They come in different grits. There are wet stones mostly, and some take water and some take oil. If your honing stone says it uses oil and it came with oil, use oil on it. If it says it's a water stone, you can just take a big plastic cup or some kind of dish, put some warm water in there, dip it in there, get it wet, and use it as the stone starts to dry out, or you start to see the gray metal shavings, which is basically the metal coming off the blade of the knife. Then you're going to want to dip that stone in and rinse it off in water. And if it's an oil stone, you're just going to put more oil on. An oil stone, you're typically going to run a little fine line of oil down the middle of it like this, and then you're going to take your hands and you're just going to rub it around until the whole stone is covered. I'm not going to put oil on this stone for the purposes of instruction today. So stones are great. They're fast, they're flexible at sharpening knives and lots of other tools, since they're all freehand, since you're actually having to hold the angle and draw the thing yourself. But that's also the con. They're difficult to master. People struggle mightily for some reason to sharpen on stones. Hopefully a couple things I'm going to show you will help break that problem for you. It relies on constant, steady pressure and keeping a proper angle through the stroke. And then also, you probably are going to have several different stones that you bring with you, at least two in most cases, maybe more, to get the same kind of edges that you get on some of these other devices I'm going to show you in a minute. And then finally, if you're going to sharpen on a stone and you're trying to learn, I recommend that you get a set of angle sets, or what they sometimes call angle guides. This is an older set I have that each one is individual. They have newer ones that are four-sided pyramids. You just turn them and you get 17 here, 19 here, 20 here, 23 here, etc. And you get two little pyramids that you stick on top of your stones to sharpen off of. But what this basically does is this lets you pick an angle that you want to sharpen at, like this, and then lay the knife down like this and get that exact angle. So you just put the blade up against it and it lays the knife down like so and gives you that angle. So this 23-degree angle set would put a 23-degree angle on this blade when I sharpen it, if that makes sense. So, you can choose what angle you want to use. So it's very simple to use these in one respect, because obviously all it is a stone that you're drawing the knife over. But here's where a lot of people make mistakes when they sharpen with these. And I'm going to show you on a different knife. I'm going to use an old beater knife. So if I put this knife down flat, what you notice here on the video is that there's a gap, right? Everybody sees that shadow, I would think, underneath the stone. So obviously that's not the angle I want. So when you're sharpening on a stone, your goal here is to very simply close the gap, right? You're going to rotate the knife up until you don't have a gap anymore, right? So that's what you want. You're going to close the gap. You're going to go from this, where you can obviously see you're not at the right angle, to there, right? So now you don't see any daylight under this knife anymore, right? And so once you close the gap, then you're ready to begin your sharpening motion, okay? And all that's going to happen on this is you're going to take the knife you're going to get your angle. You're going to close the gap up, right? There we go. And then, and here's the important part, you're going to lock your wrist in place. You're not going to move that wrist anymore. And you're basically going to draw the knife towards you and back away from the stone, like this. Stop before you go off the edge. Bring it back up. Get your angle. If you've already got it still locked in on your wrist, great. But get your angle, right? Draw it across. And you should probably end up right in about the same spot on the stone, right? The reason you don't want to go off the edge is because if you do that consistently, it doesn't matter if you do that once in a while, but if you do that consistently, you will round off the tip of your knife. You'll round off the point. This knife is beat up, by the way. This is an old IKEA kitchen knife. But it serves the purpose of showing you guys what you're trying to accomplish. So you're pulling the knife. Once you get the angle locked in, you're pulling the knife away from the stone, back from the stone, and drawing it across, and then stopping before the tip goes off. However many strokes you make in this direction, in this case, I believe we made 3, you're going to do the same thing here. You're going to find that angle that you want. You're going to set the knife up. You're going to draw the knife across the stone and stop down there. Same thing. Set the angle, draw the knife across the stone, set down there. Okay? And what you're going to notice, if you're doing this right, again, let the knife be the pressure and then a little bit of hand pressure. You don't want to press hard. You're not trying to bend the blade like this. All you're trying to do is just provide a little bit of friction for this stone to do the job. Let the stone or the diamond grit do the job. So again, you're going to close the angle. You're going to pull the knife back. And now you notice, because I've already done 3 or 4 passes, it doesn't sound as gritty on this side. Listen. Hear that sound change from scraping to more of a, it's got more of a smoother sound to it. And that's what you want to do. Hear it? Okay? So that's all you're doing when you're sharpening on a stone. And then you would move to the next finest grit down and repeat this process again. What makes it tricky is making sure that you're always holding the same exact angle every single time. You're starting in the same place. That's why I recommend using angle sets. They're extremely helpful, and they'll help you learn how to get the same stroke angle on the blade and hopefully pull it across there. But you don't want to press super hard, and you want to listen and feel. You want to feel that pressure, that light pressure, let the stones or the grits do the work, and then you want to listen for when it changes. After you make 2, 3, 4, depending on how dull your knife is, strokes in each direction, you're going to notice that if you go back and start again, you can be like, okay, well, I'm not really feeling that drag. I'm not feeling that knife drag across the stone. It's kind of gliding across the stone. Then you're done. Okay? So now let's move on to the kind of sharpener that I use the most, and that is the bench field guided angle sharpeners. So I'm going to cover 3 very similar ones. So this is made by Work Sharp. It's branded the Benchmade. This one is a 14 degree, and it's made to sharpen fine bladed knives like this to have really sharp, fine edges. And the reason it doesn't have a gritty, coarse type of stone like this other one has is because a lot of times these knives aren't worked heavy, so you don't need a ton of sharpening to get a knife like this back to a sharp state. So let me show you how this basically works. So this is set. These angles here are set at 14 degrees in relationship to the center point of your blade, to the center point of the knife. So when you take the knife and you lay it down on here like this flat, that is a 14 degree angle for sharpening. And all you have to do with this is the exact same principles I was talking about here, except you don't have to worry about closing the gap or figuring out if you have the angles right. All you have to do is put the knife down like this, draw it across here, and stop before the point goes off. Then you're just going to flip it over in your hand. You're going to rest the blade against this side, and you're going to draw it across here like this, and stop there. And you're just going to do that evenly, however many strokes. 5 strokes this way, 5 strokes that way. And that is the basis of sharpening with one of these sharpeners. This one also has a strop on the bottom. I'll explain how strops work when I get to this last sharpener. One other thing I want to show you before I move on to these last ones. So we talked about getting the angles right on sharpening a knife, and you don't know what angle to use. I don't know what angle I'm supposed to use. Well, it doesn't kind of matter if you use the method that I showed you on the stone, but let's just suppose that you wanted to know whether you were sharpening this crappy kitchen knife at the right angle. So what you would do is you would take the Sharpie and you just color in a portion of the blade with the Sharpie. And you only have to color in the part of the blade that's actually ground. Not this part, right? You're not worrying about this. You're just taking the Sharpie. I don't know if you can see that. And you're just coloring in the blade. Okay? So I've got Sharpie on the blade. I think maybe you can see it a little bit. But this is kind of a fine edge. So I put the Sharpie on there, the black Sharpie. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the knife up on the stone. And I'm going to get the angle I think it's supposed to be at, like this. Okay? And I'm going to draw it just like I did before. And then I'm going to turn it over. And I'm going to look at the Sharpie edge. And I'm a little too steep. I've got to lay the knife down a little more. Okay? So I'm going to lay the knife down a little more. And now I got it. So 90% of that about 90% of the Sharpie is gone off of this thing. Okay? It's not there anymore. There's a little bit up here toward the very top. So if I keep sharpening this, eventually that will go away, right? But basically, that lets you know if you're getting the entire sharpening edge. You can see now I sharpened a little high there. Oh no, I got it all. So there it is. So now I have all the Sharpie is gone off of there, off of that edge. There's no more black Sharpie on there. And it's a lot easier to see when you do a knife like this. This one's a better example. So what you'd want to do, I'll do this just to show you, is you'd want to take it and you'd want to go like this. Right? Can you see that? So you'd want to color in the actual sharpened part of the blade. And then if you're sharpening this knife at the right angle, that's going to all disappear. You're not going to see that left on there. Afterwards, if there's any residuals left in the little cracks or crevices or whatever, you get a little bit up here on the top of the blade, you can just take alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and a Q-tip and just wipe the blade off a little bit, and you'll get any Sharpie that you left up there. But if you are sharpening at the right angle, that is all going to go away. If you're sharpening with it too steep, like this, it's too high, then you're only going to see the very bottom of the Sharpie disappear, the marker disappear. And if you're sharpening with it leaned over too low like this, then you're only going to see the part up here near where the grind begins disappear. So that's a good way for you to know whether you're sharpening your knife at the angle that it already had. And then, like I said, it's not a big deal. All you have to do is just take some rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip, or rubbing alcohol and a cloth, and just go like this and just rub any extra Sharpie that happens to be left, like say maybe back here at the very end. You can do the whole blade if you want, but once you get the angle right, you should be pretty good to go. I usually do it here, somewhere in the middle, so that that's usually pretty consistent. I'll do it in the middle and I'll figure that out. So that's what using the Sharpie is all about. That's how that works. Okay, so we're going to do one more sharpener here real quick because we're almost at 25 minutes. So this is my favorite of the bunch. These two here have some different angles on them. This one is at 20 to start with and then finishes at 25. And that creates a micro bevel. And that's the beautiful thing about these sharpeners that have the two sets of angles on them. Like this one here is 20 coarse, 20 fine. Most of the time you're only going to need to fine. And then also this one here, this work sharp here, this one has replaceable plates on it. So if you wear out your diamond plates, they don't need any water or lubricant. If you wear out your diamond plates, this one actually says coarse on it. They are held on magnetically. There's a great little how-to instruction thing in there. But if you get comfortable with this and you don't want to keep that around, you can put other stuff in here. You could, whatever, you could put money in there or roll up change or I don't know, whatever. But this will still easily fit in a backpack. You can get cases for these as well. It has a lanyard hole in it, as the other ones do. There's lanyard holes in both of these. But they will create micro bevels. So you have 20 degrees on this one on both the coarse and the fine, and then this one up here for the ceramic is 25 degrees. So this will create a micro bevel. And 2 of the 3 of these I have suede strops on the back of them for finishing your knife. So you can put a little bit of this green polishing material on there. You can rub a little bit of that on there when it wears off, and you can strap your knives at the end. So let me show you how this one works. So basically what you would do, this is how easy this is. What you would do is you'd lay your knife down, just flat against there like this. We'll use this, we'll skip the coarse part. You lay your knife down there like this. Remember what I said? Feel the pressure and listen for the change in sound, okay? So basically all I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna lock my wrist, just like I would using this, and this is what I love about these, is once you learn how to sharpen on this at a set angle, it makes it easier for you to learn how to sharpen on one of these, because you're getting used to that sharpening motion and you're getting used to holding that same angle, whatever that angle is, all the way through the stroke. So you're just gonna lock your wrist, pull back, stop before the tip goes off. Set it back on there, make sure it's flat, light pressure, lock your wrist. One more time. And that third time, that drag on the knife changed and the sound started to change. And then you're gonna do the same thing here, right? So get the angle you want, lock your wrist. Okay, same thing. Pull it across. You want to not go off the end. You don't want to round off the tip, right? So make sure you try not to go off the end. Once in a while it won't matter. But you can already see and hear, if you were watching, that it's a lot easier. So now you're just going to go back and forth until you don't feel any more drag, right? The sound will change. The resistance will change. So now I put my 20-degree angle on it here. Now I'm just going to slide up here, and here's going to be my micro bevel. And then we do the other side. Always try to do the same amount of strokes so you don't sharpen the knife unevenly or take more material off of one side than the other. Okay? And then, excuse me. And then when you're done, you're going to go to stropping. So with the strop, sorry, you're just going to lay the knife down in the same angle. And then you're just going to hold your wrist and just bring it up here into the strop. Now, the strop, you're going to pull it away, or you're going to pull it toward you. You're not going to cut into the strop. So you're going to pull the sharp edge of the knife right off of here, slide across, light pressure, turn it around, do the same thing, switch, and you can do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 at a time on this side and then do the other side, right? Or you can rotate back and forth. And that's it. That's as simple as it is. This has everything you want. It even has a fine ceramic, a coarse ceramic here, and a thing for doing fishing hooks, and you just turn this to get a different setting. There's fishing hooks. There's fine ceramic. And there's coarse ceramic, which has some little lines and abrasions on it. Okay, so that is it. And I love these. It also has a ceramic thing here for sharpening the serrations on your knife. It has a strap on the back of it. Guys, this is the way to go, okay? And then finally, you saw me stropping, so it's always good to have a strop around. You can buy some stropping polish. You put the stropping polish on here. You just rub a little coat of this green polish on here, and you're going to do the same thing that you did on this strop. The only difference is this is unguided. So with the strops, you always want to start out kind of shallow. If you see it polishing the grind of the knife, you can go a little steeper. But basically all you're doing is you're basically drawing the knife back across the strap like this, back and forth, just like you saw me do on the other one. So if you're using a stone like this and you want to strap, then you're going to have to buy something like this. They come in two-sided as well. This one is a fine grain leather on this strap, and if you notice, these are actually suede, which is all that is the other side of the leather, right? So the back side of the leather, the non-shiny side of the leather, is called suede. The other cool thing about these work sharps is besides these being replaceable, they offer replacement straps. You just peel this adhesive backing off of this, order your new one, peel the adhesive off, stick it back on, voila. So this is definitely the sharpener. If I could only have one sharpener in my arsenal, it would be this little one right here. But the only thing about this is it only does 20-degree edges. So I've got a couple of different sharpeners that offer different edges, 14 for the finer knives, but most of my knives are I'm sharpening at 20 degrees. So that kind of concludes what I've got going on. Remember, pressure, use your ears, listen and feel for drag on the knife. That's important. Also, I have a Work Sharp Precision Elite in this box right here. I will be doing another shorter video on that. So if you're interested in one of those, there's two price ranges. There's a $50 or $60 version of that, and the Elite version, which is around $120 or $130. Keep your eyes peeled for a video on that as well. I will be doing that in a couple of weeks. All right, that's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found some useful information out of all this stuff. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you very much, and stay sharp, folks.